Hello there, husband.
Hey, wife, and happy summer to you.
Happy summer indeed, or as us Arizonians like to say, hell season.
Yeah, it's weird around here, but it is summertime. It's a big season for most, and that's why we have a big show. I'm talking a huge show for you today.
By the way, we are the Game and Drink Connoisseurs, and this is the Game and Drink Connoisseurs podcast.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that.
That's all right. And today's episode, we said it's going to be big. It's going to be really different than what we've done before. Instead of talking about one game, we're actually going to talk about 12. A dozen games that personify the summer season and really bring out those sunshiny vibes. This is our way of bringing in the summer with a board game bang.
Oh my good God.
Or just with a bang, a regular bang. Any kind of bang, but not like what you're thinking. Shut up. Tell them about
Let me interject here. While we do have 12 games, we still only have one brew. It is a summertime beer that is so popular in the Michigan area that it actually gets its own unofficial holiday. We're going to be pairing today's games with Oberon Ale by Bell's Brewing. This is a wheat ale with a lot of citrusy orange goodness mixed into it, so should be right at home here on a big summertime episode. We also have for you the history of a bunch of summertime staples from right here in America. All the things we grew up with, all the things we know and love about summer, we're going to give you the history on those. And we will be closing the show out from behind the bar with an Oberon Ale Orange Sangria. It's going to be a beer cocktail that's going to help make your barbecues and your cookouts and your pool days this summer season all that much sweeter. Like we said, fucking massive show for you today, but it's going to be awesome.
I think this might be the biggest one I've ever experienced. It's going to be a lot to handle, but I think I'm going to be satisfied in the end.
I hope everybody feels the same as you. Jessica, let me ask you a question. Where does summer rank for you in the list of seasons from favorite to least favorite?
That feels like a trick question because, as I mentioned, we live in hell. So summer is very low on my list when it is 120 degrees at like 7 in the morning. But generally speaking, in normal places with normal weather, I really like summer. It's like right up there with fall, kind of tied for my favorite.
I have always looked at summer kind of like maybe my second or third favorite. Like you said, it depends on where we are. Right now, summer is a very, very odd season because Arizona is very different. Our autumn is kind of like a mild summer. Our winter is kind of like a mild autumn. Our spring is more like a regular summer. And then our summer season is like somewhere between 100 and 110 and scorching, or somewhere between 80 and 100 and just downpouring rain monsoons all day long.
Yeah, it's like if you ever saw that monsoon scene in Jumanji.
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, well, it's a thing, and it happens here, only it's in the desert instead of the jungle.
So if your summer is less than ideal, kind of like ours is here in southern Arizona, maybe these games we have picked out on this list will kind of give you some summer vibes.
That's certainly the hope. Summer and board games don't really mix because in the summertime, you generally, in most places, want to be outside. You're thinking about being out in nature and outdoors, and that's kind of the opposite of sitting inside at a table playing a board game. But these are still good summer games in that they encompass summertime activities, summertime themes, or just have kind of a summer vibe.
On the other hand, we have Oberon Ale. This is another minimal ingredient wheat beer made specifically for the summer.
Summer beers are tricky to get right.
Yes, they are.
We actually had to hunt down a good summer beer for this episode. They can be hard to swallow, so to speak, or just literally. And so we did actually a tasting, and we tasted quite a few beers before we landed on one that we thought was good enough to bring to the episode.
Yeah, most of them tasted like ass, and that's because it's hard to capture summer flavors while not going the route of cider or some weird, freaky light beer, and we'll talk about that later. All right, Jessica, let's dive into this massive summer special episode we got. I'm about to pour us our first glasses of Oberon. Coming right up, we have our main event. Jessica and I introduce you to a ton of games that encompass the spirit of summer, at least as much as a board game can. Will they add to your season of fun in the sun? Well, we'll find out in just a minute. But first, let us take a second to learn a little more about Oberon by Bell's Brewing.
Oberon Ale by Bell's Brewing is a highly celebrated summertime wheat ale that's been making its mark for the last 31 summer seasons. Hailing from Kalamazoo, Bell's began as a simple homebrew operation in 1985, slowly becoming more and more prevalent in the southwest Michigan area with several notable craft beers unlike anything anyone had ever tried before at the time. Their Oberon Ale has been described as the brew that brought craft beer to the Midwest, making a huge impact in not just Michigan, but Indiana and Illinois as well. This is due, according to its fans, to the beer's light but malty body, mixed with a very crisp and refreshing citrus punch, followed by sweet, but not too sweet, undertones. It also has a very bright, vibrant, and bold orange color to it, which brings out its summertime vibes even more. Oberon sets itself aside from many other summer beers by taking a minimalist approach. Oftentimes, breweries offering up summer beers will add fruit to their mash, or go the route of ciders to try and capture summertime flavors. This often yields very mixed results, as the chemistry of fruit and typical beer ingredients can clash rather unfavorably. Oberon strips things down to the basics with a simple wheat malt and water mash, sweet and citrusy hops, and Bell's very own in-house yeast to give drinkers a light, fragrant beer that tops the list of many beer fans as their go-to summer brew. Not too many other brews out there get their own annual holiday to celebrate its first batch of the season, but Oberon does. Will it leave such a celebratory mark on us, though? Well, we shall see. In the meantime, if you're in search of a summertime brew and Oberon by Bell's Brewing has piqued your interest, you can learn much more about it by visiting bellsbeer.com. Right after you finish this podcast, of course.
Okay, so here's how this list works. We have a bunch of games that either have a summer theme or remind us heavily of the summer somehow. We have 10 games for you, plus each of us have an additional game that reminds us the most of summer. So you get 12 awesome games on this list today.
The list is not in any particular order, with the exception of our number one picks. Our top choices for each of us, those are going to be obviously last.
So I'll go ahead and get us started. The first game on our list today is Freshwater Fly. This is a 1 to 4 player game all about fishing in the river, and you can currently find it online for around $40 or $50. The reason this game made our list is because fishing is very, very summer. It's a summertime activity, although spring is technically the most ideal for fly fishing. Whatever, it counts. Basically, though, this is a dice drafting set collector hybrid. You are going to draft dice and use them to catch fish and reel them in using this cool reel piece on your player board. Along the way, you're going to pick up skills and tools, and then certain sets of fish and hatch tokens are going to earn you points. Everybody has their own different set of points that they're trying to chase, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most points is the winner. This is about as close to fishing as a board game can get. It is very thematically detailed, from the wheel that acts as the reel and you actually have to turn it, and the hatch with the fish and the way the river flows. Very, very thematic. And I think the great artwork has a lot to do with that. All the fish are very colorful and very vibrant. The river kind of looks like a river. And so all that artwork and theme mixed together just makes for a really good game, I think.
I agree. It's a really great game. We found it's best played at 2 players. If you add 3 or 4, it's a little bit of a drag. It just takes kind of a while. The solo mode is highly rated, highly regarded by a lot of people. We haven't tried that one yet.
Yeah, a lot of people do say that it's the best part of the game, so maybe we will see. You know, the thing with this game is there's not much to it. It's very repetitive, but that's thematically accurate. It feels like fishing, right? You're casting, you catch a fish, you reel him in, you cast, you catch a fish, you reel him in. This game is probably not going to hit your table all that often because of that repetition, but when the mood strikes, if you're in the mood for a fishing game, or if you want to bring a summer theme to your table that involves fishing, we would suggest Freshwater Fly.
Next up on our list is Longboard. It's a 2 to 4 player card drafting set collector about building really big longboards, which are a type of surfboard, and it's currently going for around $21. The reason this reminds us of summer is because surfing obviously evokes summertime vibes. In some places you can surf all year round depending on the weather, but most people associate it with the summer, especially for us when we were growing up. So the game is played by drawing longboard cards of various colors, labeled with various numbers and branded with a variety of stickers. And the stickers are where the points come from. You actually have the option to swap cards with other players, and it's not a choice for them. You just take one of theirs and give them one of yours. There's rules you have to follow, but that's a very interesting dynamic. You build your personal boards according to the color in a numerical order. There's certain goal cards that change out depending on when you're playing, and that's going to influence how your board is built, or your boards are built. At the end of the game, you determine your goal points based on the goal cards, and you also count the number of stickers on each of your boards, and that is how you determine the winner. It's a very straightforward, casual game. It's simple, but it's very interesting, especially with that card swapping dynamic. The idea that your hand is face up on the table, everyone can see what you have, and anyone could take one of your cards at any given moment. So planning ahead has that extra level of challenge.
Well, especially because the cards also tell you how many of those cards are in the deck. So if you have a number, say 4, and you see 2 other number 4s on the table, you know, okay, there's only so many left. And then watching people use them to build their boards. When do I take one? When do I play it? There's a lot more thinking to it than it seems, even though it is a fairly casual game. The one thing about this one, though, for me, I noticed is somebody could speed through the game, theoretically. They could build the minimum on all of their surfboards and then cut everybody off at the knees and be like, I win.
That's true, because you're only scored for the boards that are actually completed. So if someone rushes to complete their boards before someone else has completed any because they're trying to, be strategic about it, that would be a quick way to end the game and potentially win. But it is a good game for light play. I think it would also be a great game to keep the kids distracted while you play a bigger game. It's simple enough that I think kids would understand it and have fun with it, but it's also fun enough for adults, I think. So that's why it made it to our summer list. That is Longboard.
The third spot on our list belongs to a game called Strawberry Sunset. This is a smaller 2 to 4 player card game about building a strawberry garden, and you can find it online right now for about $13. The reason this reminds us of summer is because strawberries are typically a summer fruit, or at least that's when they're the most in season. And for me personally, growing up in Long Beach, there were a ton of strawberry fields just south of us in Seal Beach. And then in June and July, strawberry stands would pop up everywhere. And for $5, you just got this big basket of strawberries. As a kid who never had a lot of money, for $5 eating strawberries all day, man, there was nothing better because they were so good. Anyway, in Strawberry Sunset, the deck is made of 3 smaller decks, each representing 3 different phases of the day. During your sunrise phase, you're drawing cards to plant your strawberry vines. By midday, you are helping your plants flower, and then by sunset, you grow your strawberries. Every card's divided into 4 quadrants, and when you lay cards down, you have to cover at least 1/4 of a card you've already played before. You also have the option to build a lot of decorative items such as koi ponds and lawn gnomes in your garden as well. And at the end of the game, you're going to score your strawberries and your decorations and even your pathways. Whoever has the most points at the end is going to be the winner. When we first played this game, Jess, I was really surprised on how tricky it was because there's not a whole lot to the cards, but the way you have to stack them, you find yourself making a lot of Sophie's choices. So it's like, man, I laid down this vine, I laid down this flower, but I need this garden gnome, but I got to cover it up because I also need the strawberry. I don't know what to do. It's very tricky like that, and I think it makes it really, really good. But this is also another game that plays fast, so if you mess up, you can just play again really quick, and I like that about this game.
It's good for both of those reasons. The artwork in this, it's really nice. It's subtle, but it's nice. It's pretty, it's cohesive. The different decorative elements are really adorable. This game is heavy on the luck of the draw, but there's a compost element, which allows you to sometimes take cards out of the discard pile, and that offsets this luck of the draw a little bit, because you can sort of see what you're getting.
If this sounds like a game for you, be warned, for a deck of cards that is 4 cards less than a poker deck, this game takes up a lot of space because everyone's building their garden from the center out, so you do need quite a bit of table space to play. However, this is a great one for warming up or winding down, or if you just want to sit on your porch or in your garden and play something really quick and really fun, Strawberry Sunset might be where it's at for you.
Next up is Parks, a 1 to 5 player strategic set collecting worker placement-ish game all about hiking through America's national parks. And it is currently being sold for around $50. This game reminds us of summer because going to national parks is an immensely popular summer activity. Obviously, there are some parks you might want to visit at other times of the year, but most people go to these parks during the summer. And the game itself seems to lean into the summer. There's lots of sunshine.
Yeah, this game bleeds sunshine almost.
So to play the game, you hike along pathways collecting different tokens, among which are sunshine tokens. You turn these tokens in to collect park cards, which are worth varying amounts of points. The tokens are also used to buy items and special abilities. It's all about knowing when to move your hikers and where to put them. There are end-of-trail bonuses for reaching the end first, but you might need to make more stops along the way to get supplies or tokens, so it's just making that negotiation. After 4 rounds of hiking along the pathways, whoever has the most points is the winner. This is a very, very pretty game. The cards that are for the parks actually have beautiful pictures of the national parks and factoids about the parks they represent. So that's a really nice touch. It also has a wonderful insert and everything fits perfectly. And the components are just top-notch beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. What I like about this game is it's very streamlined and easy to understand. It's a very thinky game, like when to move my hikers, when not to, when to let someone get there first, when to get ahead of them. But because it is streamlined, it doesn't feel like there's too much going on. So I think people will have a good time with this game thinking it through, but also not feeling overwhelmed. And I think that's a good mix for a game of this type.
Yes, and this is a perfect intro game for newbies without being a little too simple for experienced players. This is a really good game for mixed skill levels.
Next up on our list, sitting at number 5, is a game called Bottom of the Ninth. This is a 1 to 2 player bluffing and deduction dice roller all about baseball, and you can currently find it online for around $20. Why does this relate to summer to us? Well, it should be obvious, right? You don't have summer without baseball. So in Bottom of the Ninth, you have one player playing as the home team and the other as the away team. The game is all tied up at the bottom of the ninth, so the person playing the home team has to score 1 run before the away team can produce 3 outs. So as the batter, your job is to try to guess what type of pitch the pitcher is going to throw. And there's a couple of different ways the pitcher can throw the ball across the plate. The closer the batter gets to guessing the exact pitch, the more abilities they're going to get. And the further away he is from guessing the exact pitch, the more abilities the pitcher is going to have. From there, everyone's going to roll a couple of dice to determine whether or not the ball was hit, if the guy gets on base, if he swings and misses, if it's a foul ball, if he strikes out. All sorts of things are determined with those dice rolls. So the game's really all about trying to guess what your opponent is guessing about what you're going to do the opposite, and throw a wrench in their plans. So Jess, what I like about this game is that it plays very, very quick, but it's also really, really fun. The whole dynamic of like throwing the pitch and trying to guess what the pitch is, and then the way you race to see if the guy gets on base by both rolling dice at the same time, and whoever yells out or safe first when they roll a 5 or a 6, I think that's really cool. I also think that the artwork helps this game a lot. There's a great mix of like the classic baseball look and the modern baseball look, and you can specifically see this in the playing cards that are your characters.
The playing cards on the front of them, they look like baseball cards, which is really cool. And they come in a little package that looks like a baseball card pack. One of the components actually looks like a stick of gum on the backside of it. It's very nostalgic. It really mixes that baseball card collector nicely with the actual baseball elements of the game.
The other thing, too, is it's not a full game of baseball. It's the bottom of the ninth. It's the most exciting time, and I think that helps keep the tension high throughout the game.
It definitely keeps that tension high, and it keeps it interesting. I think if you tried to play a full 9 innings with this game mechanic, it would drag on, and it might actually feel too long and maybe a little boring. So I think it's good that it's just that one very high tension, heightened moment, and it's just a race to see who can either score a run or get the other person out first.
You might be right, but you know what? I think if people like this game, or if they like a game about baseball that isn't just pen and paper, that actually puts guys on the board and has special abilities and dice rolling, if people like it, this game can be adjusted to play a full game. So maybe if you're like Jessica, that doesn't sound too appealing. I'm actually pretty curious to try it because I do like baseball quite a bit. But either way, this is a fun game to get at the table for 1 or 2 players. It pairs great with some ambiance music. If you got Take Me Out to the Ball Game playing on a speaker in the background somewhere, some crowd noise, it really does help bring the game to life. And of course, it's just not a game of baseball without a cold beer in hand. So if that sounds good to you, check out Bottom of the Ninth.
6th game on our list is Azul, Summer Pavillion. This is a 2 to 4 player tiling abstract game. You're building a vibrant pavilion using the famous Portuguese tiles. This one's going for around $32 online. And it reminds us of summer because of the bright and vibrant summer colors. It's actually based on a historical architectural project. And pavilions, generally speaking, you find them near pools. And pools obviously evoke summer. This is a slightly more complicated version than the original Azul game. You're still drafting colorful tiles, but you're putting them in a star formation on matching spaces on your player board. And in this game, the spaces are marked between 1 and 6, and you have to collect that number of tiles in order to place 1 tile on a space. When you cover certain spaces in certain patterns, you actually unlock bonus tiles from a community pool, which is an aspect that's not in the original game. But like the original game, the more spaces you cover and the more strategically you cover them, the more points you get. We really like that this game is a more forward-thinking version of Azul. You have to really think ahead a lot more than in the regular Azul game because what you're doing in the earlier rounds has a different kind of impact in the future rounds. So it's more like you're building up to something rather than just kind of seeing what's out there in any given round and working with what's available. It requires you to really be strategic about what you take and when. And the color scheme is just fantastic.
It's definitely more complicated than the original Azul game. I know a lot of people are big fans of that. Azul is a gateway game for most people, meaning the game that they show their friends who aren't really into board games, and those games get them into it. I think that Summer Pavillion could actually still do that. I think it's good for people who are just getting into board gaming because there's some strategy to it. It's all about timing, but I think it's still Azul enough in its simplicity that newbies would catch on to it really quickly and they would like it. Although I must say, for people who are familiar with the original Azul, and Jess, let me ask you, does this replace the original for you?
For me, it absolutely does. I think that the way that it works, it's different, but it's just preferable to me. I feel like it's more of a big picture thing. And I also feel like it's not quite as penalizing on the pieces not coming out the way you need them to. I feel like regular Azul, there's a lot of luck involved in terms of what tiles are actually available. There's strategy, in what you take and when, and paying attention to what other people are doing. But sometimes you can really be screwed just by what's left on the table based on what was out there in the first place. And this game, I feel like, is a lot more forgiving of those aspects by adding other elements that help overcome that.
I really suck at both, so I guess it kind of doesn't matter for me, but you made a lot of really good points just now. I think Summer Pavillion is the game I'm leaning towards between the two.
And also, Summer Pavillion allows you to actually store pieces for later use. I think that makes it a lot more interesting as well in terms of the strategic timing. And one thing we didn't mention is that each of the colors during one round of the game is actually considered wild. So it can be used to replace other colors. And that's a whole other layer of depth that's added to it. I think also notable, this might be the only game on this entire list that you can actually play outside because the weight of the pieces are not going to blow away in the wind. And so I think that this is a really excellent choice for the summer because you can actually do it while you're doing summer activities like camping or sitting by the pool or something like that.
Number 7 spot on our list goes to a game called Santa Monica. This is a 2 to 4 player city building game all about creating the best block on the beach. Currently going for around $35. The reason it reminds us of summer is because it's beach themed for number 1, it's got a lot of summer vibes for number 2, and the city of Santa Monica is known for its summertime appeal. So in Santa Monica, you are drafting beach or street cards from a deck of cards, and it's got buildings on them and volleyball courts and things like that. And you draft them and you put them on your block. Everybody starts with like one middle card and you build out from that. Each card is going to offer scoring objectives or scoring opportunities, certain benefits depending on where it's placed in relation to other cards. The cards are going to give you things like money that you can count towards special actions. You also get various meeple pieces, and they will score points depending on where they end up on your block. You can move them around, and there's other cards that allow you to move them to other locations. You also have a food truck piece and a foodie meeple that move around, and they give you opportunities to earn extra awards. And so you're laying cards out to build your block on the beach, and you're going to be scoring different things from different objectives, and you're going to add those to your personal points, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game is going to be the winner. So the first thing I'll say about this game is that it is very complicated, it is very tricky, but it's very hard to tell when you look at the box and bust open the game for the first time because the artwork and all the pieces, they're very cute. And as a man, I am hesitant to use the word cute unless absolutely accurate. It's cute. It is very mellow and calm. The colors are all soft blues and greens, and the sand is like a very soft tan color. But the game itself is insanely complex. You have a lot of different ways to score your points. There's a lot of variety due to the different goal cards and how they interact with the way you put your buildings down, and there is a lot to think about here.
There's an element also of the meeples. Some of the cards give you different types of meeples, and other cards give you the opportunity to move those meeples. But there's actually not a lot of movement opportunities in the game until the very end. Right before final scoring, you get to move everybody one last time and then score. But it seems like it's a lot more reliant on the placement of your cards in terms of where the bulk of the points are. But at the same time, it's really unforgiving if your meeples aren't moved strategically, because if they end up unplaced, that is in locations where they're not supposed to be, they're going to actually give you negative points usually.
And that's the complicated thing about it. A lot of the cards are going to give you meeples, but not many cards move them. And so like Jess said, laying the cards down strategically so when you do move them, you can send them home. That's what it's all about. But sometimes you have way too many. So maybe you don't lay down the card that gives you all those people because you don't have a place for them to go. But the cool thing about that is everybody is struggling with the same thing. And so the scoring is pretty complex in that regard because it keeps the winner unknown until the end. So everybody feels like they're still in it. And I think that helps that mellow and calm feeling the game is going for, despite it being pretty complicated. So if you're in the market for a game that's going to burn your brain, but gives all the calm, mellow vibes of sitting on the beach of Santa Monica, maybe go for the game Santa Monica. In fact, I would recommend the game Santa Monica more than I would recommend going to the actual Santa Monica anymore, because that has turned, unfortunately, into a shithole.
That's definitely true about Santa Monica. But moving on to the 8th game on our list, it is Fun Fair. This is a 1 to 4 player card drafting, light engine building, or really more theme park building, where you're actually building an amusement park and trying to build the most awesome park out of everyone. So this one's going for around $40 right now. It reminds us of summer because amusement parks, I think for most people, are synonymous with summer. Usually most people go during the summer. That's when they're really packed, when you have the most fun there, probably because kids are out of school or whatever. But yeah, summertime amusement parks, it just makes sense. So in this game, you draft different rides and attractions and also upgrades to your rides and attractions every round to build your amusement park. You build things, you earn money, you build more things, you earn more money, like an engine builder. You combo certain things for extra bonuses, and you have some city planning cards that are round effects that everybody has to deal with. And then you also have blueprint cards, which these are the personal goals. The more things on a ride, the more points you score. So if you build a ride and put 15 upgrades on it, that's going to give you a crap ton of points. So really, you're trying to balance having different rides that meet certain goals and also having really big rides that are worth a lot of points. And it's all about building a park that flows and where the parts complement each other. This game is super fun. It's a lot of fun building up your roller coasters and your different attractions. You can add different themes. The artwork and the components are really fun, really thematic. Another special note about the board design is that it actually has 2 different sides. And on one side, you can sit next to each other. And on the other side, you can sit across from each other, depending on the player count. And that's really cool, especially if you have 2 players. Depending on, your table configuration, it gives you those options so that somebody's not always having to look at upside down cards. And that's one of the things personally that I found to be really cool about this game.
This game is fairly easy and straightforward, I would say. It's not too competitive. I mean, you are competing for let me grab that card before my opponent does, but it doesn't hurt you all that much. This is definitely more a game if you're trying to lay back and just kind of have fun seeing what you can do with your park. And you did something cool with your park. That's awesome. But there are different ways to play. You can do all roller coasters. You can do theaters. You can do, I think, sideshow, freak show type of attractions. Certain goal cards will tell you to build your park in a certain way, so it's not like there isn't variety. I think it keeps the game fresh. I think you can play it again and again and have a good time with it, even though it is still pretty light.
If you would prefer a more heavy version, there's actually another counterpart to this game out there called Unfair, and it's basically the same thing, but it's more difficult. There's more player interaction and depth. It's a little more competitive. We like Funfair because for this list, it's more summer. Summer is mellow, and it's not as heavy and crazy. It's a time to relax, right? But Unfair is also a fun alternative, and if you're looking for more of that competitive edge, that could be an option as well.
Number 9 on our list is a game we just discovered recently, and I'm really glad we did. It is called Skate Summer. This is a 2 to 4 player push your luck set collector about skateboarding. You're skating around town, pulling off insane combos, building your skills, and you can currently find this one going for around $40 to $50. So skateboarding in summertime is fairly synonymous for everyone. Growing up in Southern California like I did, it was skateboard central. So every summer the kids are out, they're on their boards. I was never too good at skateboarding, but I played a lot of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, and I think the designer played a lot of Pro Skater 2 as well, not to mention the name Summer's right there in the name of the game. So in Skate Summer, you're going to start every round by doing a series of tricks to build up your stats, and the trick is to not lose your balance. Every time you complete a trick, you're going to add a die to a pool of dice that you're going to roll, and it's going to push you one way or another on your balance track, and the more tracks you do, the more chance you have of losing your balance. Whatever tricks you're able to land, you're going to trade those trick cards in to move your little skateboard meeple all around the board, and you're going to skate to different spots to collect different upgrades that you can then transfer over to your personal board, which is also your player board. These upgrades are going to give you huge bonuses. You're going to have more balance. You're going to unlock special tricks faster, all sorts of things. You can also, as you're skating around town, pick up items that are worth points as you go as well. So what I will say about this game is it is a little limited in what you can do, but what you can do is done really, really well. I think the doing tricks and the rolling the dice and the pushing your luck and then collecting things and skating around town, it all flows really good and it's all very cohesive and awesome. The artwork itself is very early 2000s. You can tell the designer played a lot of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, like I said before. In fact, I talked to the guy, and he confirmed this. Hey, Bryce from the future here. Normally, Jessica and I avoid mentioning the names of the game designers when we talk about the games on the show, especially if we talk to them personally. The reason for this is we think it comes across as kind of douchey, like, ooh, name drop, right? I talked to this designer and I talked to that designer. That's not how we want to come across. However, I'm going to make an exception here and give a shout out to Randy Ryman, who is the designer of Skate Summer. And the reason we're doing that is because unlike most designers, he spent a good deal of time messaging back and forth with us, or at least a lot more than most designers do. He sent us a lot of links for us to check out regarding Skate Summer, and so that's why we're going to take a second to go, hey, Randy, shout out to you. Hope you're listening. Let's get back to the show. He put a lot of effort into giving it that vibe and taking people back. There's even a soundtrack that this game comes with on Spotify right now. So the vibe of the game is good, and the way it plays is also very good.
One thing I will say is there are some limitations that can make the game stale after a while. Once you kind of figure out the pattern of getting the upgrades and what order is the smartest to get them in, you kind of end up doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, there's a little bit of luck of the draw, right? So if you don't get what you need to get where you need to go, that can stop you. But then it's almost like whoever can get the cards they need first is going to almost always be the winner. That being said, there are a lot of exciting moments while you're doing the tricks. The push your luck element is really fun and exciting. All the different tricks on the cards are kind of fun and nostalgic. They're real skateboard tricks. And the special tricks are really cool. A lot of them have some very unique abilities. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get to a lot of those special tricks, but they do seem to add a lot of fun and variety to the game.
We just need to play it a few more times, I think. I'm curious, Jess, what this game might have looked like if it was more sandboxy, like if you were to skate to certain areas and do tricks there, that helps you unlock things or give you things that will help you unlock things. What do you think about that?
I think it would be really interesting if there was more variety in terms of what you have to do or a little bit more of a challenge to it. I understand why there isn't. I mean, that's just not the game that it is. But it might have been fun to take this concept and just level it up a notch to that extra challenge.
Yeah, that would have been cool to see. But for what it is, I think it's done very, very well. So while this may not be a game you want to play all the time or else you risk it going stale, when the mood strikes or if you like skateboarding, this is definitely a game to check out. That's Skate Summer, number 9 on our list.
The final game on our list before we get to our top picks is Summer Camp. This is a 2 to 4 player deck building movement game about staying at a summer camp. It's going right now for around $20, and it reminds us of summer because obviously it's called summer camp, and you don't go to summer camp any other time except for the summer. So the game itself comes with a series of several different decks, and each deck is a theme or an activity related to summer camp. And for one game, you're going to choose 3 of those decks that are going to be played. So there's a lot of different variety and replayability there. But you take your 3 decks, and each of them represents a path that you're going to try to move your meeples along during the game. And the way you do that is by using your own personal deck to move your meeples. You can also use the cards in your personal deck for whatever their various bonus actions are, or you can use them to buy more cards from the different pathway decks and build your deck up. So you're building your deck up, you're racing along the pathways, and you pick up bonuses such as merit badges as you go. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. This game captures summer camp, or what we assume summer camp is like, really well. The different decks for the different activities is a really nice touch, and it's customizable with the different deck options, which is also really cool and really fun. It kind of reminds me that summer camps have different activities that are going to appeal to different people. You've got your crafts, you've got your outdoor stuff, you've got your sports, and you can kind of tailor it to what you're looking to do on that particular day.
I think I need to give this game another chance. I wasn't the biggest fan of it when playing. I found that the luck of the draw is a massive factor here. Now, if you play right, you can cycle through your deck pretty quickly, but there's a lot of cards in there that don't help you at all right away, which is pretty common for a deck builder of this type. You're supposed to get rid of them as you go. But I don't know, for me, I wasn't a huge fan of just constantly running into cards you don't need and then having to make these Sophie's choices with the cards you do have. But again, I need to give it another try.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fun, the deck building, but the luck of the draw can be a huge turnoff for some people, and I can understand that. All in all, though, very cute game, very cute meeples, nice artwork, just a good-looking game, nostalgic. It's got the s'mores on there. It's a lot of things that just remind you of childhood summers. For the price, it's definitely worth checking out, especially considering how much variety there is in the gameplay. Again, that is Summer Camp.
So there you have it, the first 10 games on the list. Before Jessica and I get into the games that remind us each the most of summer, we're going to pour ourselves another pint of Oberon Ale by Bell's Brewing. We have talked about a lot of summertime staples already on this list, but there are a lot more of them that haven't been made into board games, so let's take a few minutes to examine some of these other summertime activities and learn about their origins.
Summertime in the West is synonymous with many iconic staples that have been a part of each of our lives as far back as we can remember. And while we have covered many of them in today's episode by way of some awesome board games, here are a few more with some really interesting origins. The three major summertime holidays here in America are Memorial Day, the 4th of July, and Labor Day. While Memorial Day is still very much within the spring season, it has been seen as the weekend to kick off the summer for decades now. Its first unofficial celebration took place in 1866, 1 year after the end of the Civil War, to honor the fallen soldiers on both sides of the fight. Back then, it was called Dedication Day and held that name until after the First World War. In 1971, Congress passed a bill that made the holiday official. The 4th of July probably has more obvious and widely known roots. But did you know that the day of America's claim to independence was hotly contested? President John Adams was probably the most famous and stubborn opponent, as he felt July 2nd was a more accurate date for the festivities. So much so that he would refuse any invitation to July 4 celebrations. Regardless of Adams' views, Independence Day has been celebrated pretty much the same way since 1776, with fireworks, cookouts, music, beer, and parades. It became a federal holiday in 1870 and a paid holiday in 1941. While no one knows exactly who came up with Labor Day, its roots go back to the tumultuous period of the 1880s during the Industrial Revolution. The manufacturing boom that made America the wealthiest nation the world has ever known came at the expense of many exploited workers. Men, women, and children alike would often work 12 to 18-hour shifts 7 days a week and not have much to show for it. Unions would form and clash with factory owners, which came to a head on September 5, 1882, when 10,000 workers took to the streets and marched to City Hall in New York City. This inspired workers from all over the country to do the same on the first Monday of September for the next 12 years, until President Grover Cleveland signed into law the federal holiday we now know as Labor Day. One thing all those holidays share is a relationship with barbecuing. It just isn't summer without something cooking on the grill after all, although these are actually two different things. The first written Western accounts of barbecue came from Christopher Columbus, who made note of indigenous tribes from modern-day Cuba slow cooking food over an indirect flame. The Spanish would soon after refer to this technique as barbacoa and took it with them north to what is now known as America. From there, it blended with Chickasaw tribes to include pork meat. American slaves added their native spices to the meat, and European colonists added the sauce. From there, different regions would add their own unique touches, and the rest, as they say, is history. As kids, we all couldn't wait for summer break. That golden time of year between around June and September was where many of our most magical childhood memories came from. But how did it get started? There's a popular belief that the ritual of summer break has agrarian roots, the idea being that farmers needed their children during the summer to help with tending crops. The actual origins, however, are much more cosmopolitan. In the 19th century, long before the invention of air conditioning, schoolhouses in big cities surrounded by heat conductors like concrete, metal, and glass became stifling hot boxes. Rather than endure grueling and often dangerous heat all day, students just stayed home until things cooled down. Over time, school districts would form, and they simply just rolled with it. I don't know about you, but as a kid growing up in the South, summer just wasn't summer without lemonade and fireflies. While lemonade's roots can be traced back to medieval Egypt, its popularity here in America came thanks to the women's temperance movement starting in the late 19th century. In an attempt to completely remove alcohol from society altogether, lemonade was pushed heavily as an alternative. While their efforts were less than successful, to say the least, the popularity of lemonade did remain. It even tastes pretty good with vodka. Sorry, ladies. Catching fireflies in a jar is, in itself, nothing new or spectacular. However, did you know that fireflies are actually beetles? The light they produce is also the most efficient energy in the world. Culturally, they've been used or seen as symbols of good luck, bad luck, impending doom, eternal happiness, and even when to harvest barley for beer. While I grew up in the South, Bryce grew up on the beach, where a whole different summer vibe can be found. And it can be argued that no other item is as symbolic of the summer as the classic beach ball. This inflatable ball, usually made with 6 different colors, can be traced back to inventor John Barrow, who patented the design in 1938. It gained little popularity for its first 10 years until the toy company Wham-O started mass-producing them in 1948. Coming in a wide variety of sizes and colors now, this simple yet enduring toy has been entertaining beach and pool goers for nearly 9 decades, and its popularity shows zero signs of waning. Speaking of the beach, Surfing, which technically is a year-round sport, reaches tremendous heights in both popular interest and swells during the summer. The origins of surfing are hard to trace. Many point back to the 1100s in Polynesia, but there is proof that cultures along the South American coast were surfing centuries before. Either way, though, it started off as a quick and efficient means for fishermen to bring their hauls to shore. Riding a wave in their boats was much faster than paddling against the tide. To no surprise, it was quickly discovered to be fun. The boats were replaced with planks of wood, and individuals turned it into a game of skill. Polynesians brought it to Hawaii, who adopted it so deeply into their own culture that it took on religious significance. Sadly, thanks to European missionaries who frowned upon the practice, surfing was almost wiped out of Hawaiian culture entirely until the early 20th century, where it not only made a huge resurgence, but also brought forth modern-day surf culture as well. But surfing isn't the only or even oldest ancient game associated with the summer. Olympic Games have been around in a professional form since roughly 776 BC. Originating in Olympia, Greece, the ancient Greeks gave their games mythological origins in their time, so it's hard to know exactly how they really came to be. Most likely, it was a way to honor their gods through sport. The Romans adopted these games once they conquered Greece in 146 BC, and throughout many more territorial shifts and changes, the games have stuck around. Discus, long jumps, foot races, boxing, pole vaulting, and wrestling are all still main features in modern-day summer games. A rather fascinating continuation considering how long we've been doing it, although it would be kind of cool to see them bring back the chariot race.
All right, Jessica, in my attempts to be a gentleman, ladies first, why don't we start with you? What is your top pick for the game that reminds you the most of summer?
The game that reminds me the most of summer is Rocky Road a la Mode. Rocky Road a la Mode is a 2 to 4 player set collector about delivering ice cream. It's a fairly small game. It fits into a pretty tiny box, doesn't take up a ton of table space. It's going for about $20. The reason this game reminds me of the summer is because ice cream. Yes, you can eat ice cream all year round, but you're not going to see an ice cream truck usually during the colder months. So I feel like the ice cream truck is really just a true embodiment of summer. Who doesn't have memories of chasing the ice cream truck down as a kid and hoping that you have enough change in your pocket or begging your mom to give you a couple of dollars before the truck runs away? And gosh, it's just so nostalgic for me, and I have a major sweet tooth, so ice cream is still a favorite of mine. And although I don't do it because I'm an adult and it feels shameful, I still think about it every time I hear the ice cream truck in my neighborhood. I almost want to run out there and get myself a treat.
I know the feeling.
So in Rocky Road a la Mode, you move your truck around the track to draw cards. The number of spaces you move determines the number of cards that you draw. You're going to use those cards either to set orders or to fulfill them, so all the cards are dual use. The ice cream truck piece that's in last place is always going to be the one to take the next turn, so strategic movement is needed here. You're going to collect enough cards to fulfill your certain orders, and once you do that, you get points and other bonuses. You also get to pick up bonus ingredients along the track as you're moving your truck around, and once you fulfill certain orders, or a certain number of orders I should say, you get to claim neighborhoods, which give you extra points as well. The game end is triggered when someone reaches 9 points. You finish out the round, and whoever has the most points is the winner. The first thing I will say about this game is that the artwork is freaky. It's weird. It's colorful and cute, but the characters are very weird.
They're very eerie.
I personally would not trust any one of the drivers of these ice cream trucks to deliver ice cream to my kids.
No, but you know what you could count on? One of those drivers taking off with one of your kids, and your kid's now in the freezer where the ice cream's being served. Like, that's how freaky they look. They look fucking evil.
I mean, I think it's supposed to be like a whimsical vibe, but it's freaky for us.
Yeah, they got these big freaky smiles, and like one of the guys is green and scary.
One of the trucks is actually driven by 2 kids, but they give off like the twins in The Shining vibe. So I don't know. I wouldn't trust them either. One other thing, though, is the last place mechanic. That's really interesting. I've seen that in a couple of different games, but in this one, I think it's just particularly interesting because how many spaces you move forward determines how many cards you take and whether or not you're going to be the first one to catch one of those bonus ingredients. But at the same time, if you move too many spaces forward, you're going to be stuck waiting for a really long time. And if you are strategic enough, you can actually make it so that you're so far behind that you get to take a bunch of turns in a row. So it's very, very complex in that movement mechanic if you are able to use it to your advantage.
What impresses me a lot about this game is the way the cards are multi-use. You can use them as ingredients, you can use them to attract customers, you use them as your points. There's so many different things you can do with those cards, and that's what allows the game to stay so small. I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, I like that element as well. I think it's a lot of information they've packed onto these tiny cards, or I mean, they're like regular size cards, but it is a lot of information on there, but it's also not confusing. It's not so much information that you're like, oh, wait, what is this? It's very well laid out, very clever. You turn it sideways to show your points. You put it under your truck to show your order. There's just a lot of thought you can tell was put into designing these cards.
Yeah, they're definitely really easy to read. Sometimes you get games where they pack a lot of information on the card and it becomes very, very tough. You don't even need iconography, charts, or guides or whatever here with that. So yeah, really impressive. I also like the fact that you have to think about what cards you want to use for which thing, because different cards give different prizes. Sometimes you'll get points, other times you'll get permanent ice cream that you can use for other orders, and you kind of have to balance out which do I need, which do I want.
It's definitely important to make those decisions carefully, because you might say, oh, I want to get more points quickly. But then if you get a lot of points now, you might be stuck having to get more ingredients to fulfill orders later. Whereas if you forego the high point cards in the beginning to get yourself those permanent ingredients, you could be streamlining your whole process for the rest of the game where you're fulfilling orders really quickly and easily. So it's definitely a balance.
I like this game a lot. I look forward to playing it whenever we do. We don't get it on the table as often anymore, but I kind of want to play it now.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, really nostalgic and cute, and pretty quick, too. One other thing that's really great about this game is that it's portable. You can bring it with you anywhere. It's super small. You can fit it in your purse, unless you have like a really tiny like wallet purse. It probably takes up about the size of 2 decks of cards. Very, very small. It takes up a little bit of table space because you got to lay out your cards for, the orders and stuff. But you could take it to a hotel and play it in a hotel room. You don't need like a giant table. And that's something that's really awesome about it, especially for the summertime, because people tend to do a lot of traveling in the summer. So if you've ever wanted to try your hand at running an ice cream truck as a creepy like it clown or something, and just interested in that kind of weird dynamic, definitely give this game a try. Or if you're just looking for something cute and fun and ice cream related and you don't want to eat ice cream but you want to think about it a lot, that's me a lot of the time. Definitely worth the money. $20, which is a great deal for how awesome this game is, and that is Rocky Road a la mode. Okay, Bryce, now it's your turn. What is the number one game that reminds you the most of summer?
My number one game that reminds me the most of summer is Jaws. Jaws the board game is a one versus all that plays up to 4 players, all about the movie Jaws. Currently going for $30 online. This relates to summer for me, Jess, because Jaws was the very first summer blockbuster. It came out in '75, and from then on out, movies have come out in the summer to be the big action-packed thing that everybody flocks to the drive-in or the theater or whatever to see. Also, the movie takes place during the summer, and so there you go. So in Jaws, one person is going to play as Bruce the shark, that's his name if you didn't know, and everyone else is going to play as the humans, Quint, Brody, and Hooper. The game is split into 2 acts. In Act 1, it's a hidden movement deduction game. The shark is going to secretly move around the board and eat people, and the humans have to try to find him. And each of them have their own abilities. Quint and Hooper are out on the water, and their boats do different things, and then Brody's running around on land, and he can do different things. And the human players want to work together to try to find the shark as fast as possible, because the more people the shark eats, the stronger he's going to be in Act 2. Alternatively, the faster they find the shark, the stronger they will be going into Act 2. Once the shark is found or eats enough people, you flip the board over and you set up the Orca, which is the boat that the final showdown takes place on in the movie. And now, using all of their abilities that they gained from their success in Act 1, they're now going to face off in a battle to the death using dice combat. And so once again, the shark's going to be moving semi-secretly around the boat. He's going to hit the boat. The humans are going to get him. And if the shark destroys the boat or kills the humans before they kill the shark's going to win. Otherwise, the humans win, just like in the movie. So this game happens to be my personal favorite board game of all time. All the games we have, this one still remains my favorite. It's one of the first ones we bought, and it's one of the first ones we bought because Jaws also happens to be my all-time favorite movie, and maybe that has something to do with it. Whatever, I love this game. If you bring this to the table, you're going to find a lot of moments in this game that have a lot of tension in it, that have a lot of suspense in it. It really brings that Jaws theme to your table. I love that.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you're watching the movie for the first time and you really don't know what the outcome is going to be. And I like that about this game, actually. I've played other IP games where it's very clear that the game is imbalanced in a way that makes it always kind of end the same way as the movie ended. But this game, it's really well balanced. I think that there's just as much of a chance for the shark to win as there is for the humans, and that makes it so much more exciting. But I will say that Act 2 relies very heavily on the outcome of Act 1. So once either side gets a strong lead, it's pretty clear at that point who's going to come out on top.
Especially if the humans do really well or the shark gets to the max number of people eaten, the other side at that point doesn't really have a chance. It's not entirely hopeless, but under those circumstances, yeah, it gets one-sided. But like you said, pretty balanced. As long as you don't hit either of those two scenarios, you don't know who's going to come out on top.
That's right. Unless you're one extreme or the other, everyone really has a fair shot.
Now, it's unfortunate that Ravensburger couldn't get permission to use the likeness of the three men from the movie. So instead of a picture of Hooper or a picture of Brody, you just get like silhouette cutouts in the character color. I think Brody's black, Hooper's blue, Quint is green. Also, the game is pretty basic looking. The components are pretty basic. It kind of looks like an old game, but Jessica, let me ask you, I think that's one of its strengths. The movie came out in 1975, and the game kind of looks like it came out in 1975 as well, and I think that helps put you in that time period when Jaws took place.
I actually agree with that. I feel like that was a purposeful choice. It almost feels like a vintage game, and I love that about it.
And, you know, we don't play it enough because this game really doesn't shine unless you have all four players, and we don't play with a whole lot of people anymore. But I got to tell you, one of my favorite board game moments in my entire life had to do with when I played this with my sister. Do you remember that night?
I do remember that night. It was kind of amazing.
It really was. I want to tell the story. My sister was over, a few of my friends were over, a few of your friends were over, and we were doing a game night. We broke off into two groups. I took my sister, your friend, and my best friend, and you took my cousin and one of our friends, and you played Takenoko with the two of them, and I showed my sister and your friend and my friend Jaws. And you guys were doing your thing. I was showing them Act 1, and they were kind of stumbling around for a little bit, so I was taking it easy on them as the shark. I let them find me one time pretty quick, and then I slowly watched, after maybe 2 or 3 turns, they all started to get it, and they all started to work together really well. And my sister was like, oh man, what if we go over here, and then if you move your boat that way? And there was just a lot of synergy, and I was watching them have it. They caught me the second time as the shark, probably about the halfway point, so we went into Act 2 at about an even keel as far as strength and advantage goes. So now we get to Act 2, we flip the board over, we get the guys on the boat. I'm no longer taking it easy on them because they get the game and they're working together really, really well. And it is a brawl. They're hitting me, I'm hitting them, I'm destroying pieces of the boat. I think I cut the boat in half at some point, and so now they gotta like swim across, and I'm taking bites out of them. I know for sure I kill one of them. The other one I leave stranded in the corner. He's not going nowhere. I'm down to like my last bit of health. Like one more bad roll not in my favor and I'm done. But all I have to do is bite the boat one more time and they're done. By this time, you guys wrapped up Takenoko, you remember, and you started watching us play. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, we were all completely enthralled. We could not wait to see what happened. It was totally neck and neck and the tension was really high.
So I attack my sister. She's playing as the character Hooper. I remember she was playing as Hooper because she had the reroll action. She needs a good roll to take me out, and if she doesn't get a good roll, I'm going to take her out. She's all nervous. You know how Katie gets where she's like, oh, fuck, I don't know what to do, you know? And she rolls the dice, and it's about as bad a roll as you can get. And everyone's all like, oh, you know, that thing that people do when they're watching games. She has a reroll because of the character, and she's rolling the dice, and she's getting all nervous. She throws the dice, and Jessica, she gets me. And everybody just jumps up. Katie and my friend and your friend, they win the game. Everyone's like, oh, you know. It was just like the movie, right? Where the sharks come in and then the shark dies last second. The only thing that would have made it more like the movie is if my sister, before letting the dice go, said, smile, you son of a bitch. But other than that, just one of the best moments of board gaming ever. You got to see people work together. You got to see them understand it. And they walked away with a really hard-earned victory. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, one of the wonderful things about that experience for me was seeing your sister and your friend and my friend who, I mean, your sister and your friend knew each other, but my friend had never met either of them before, and she knew you sort of casually. So to see the three of them come together and work so synergistically, and they were hugging like best friends at the end of it. They were so happy and they were so in sync, and it was just a really wonderful thing. And that's just a reminder of why we do this and what it is that we love so much about board games.
It shows that board games can be a very powerful experience of camaraderie and togetherness in a world where it just seems to be everything is designed at pulling us apart from one another. Those moments right there are why people play games, or why people should play games, honestly. And that is probably why the game remains my favorite. So I'm fairly certain most people have a game in their collection that does this for them or gives them that type of story to tell. But if you don't have one and this game appeals to you, go pick up Jaws and give it a try with a couple of friends. You never know what kind of awesome memories you might take away from it, and that is why Jaws is my number one summer game, as well as my number one favorite game of all time.
So there's our list. If you're looking for summer vibes to bring to your board game table, definitely consider checking out some or all of the games we mentioned today.
So now that Jessica and I have had a whole episode to experience Oberon by Bell's, Jessica, I got to tell you, I'm a fan.
Me too. I really like this one.
You know, when we thought about what beverage we were going to cover, we knew we wanted to do a beer because it's summertime, cookouts, pools, beach, beer, obviously, right? But here's the thing. Summer beers typically tend to be terrible, and while we do like to try things for the first time on the show, I didn't want to do that with summer beers, so we actually had to go out and hunt for this one.
Yeah, I think we tried 4 or 5 different beers that we really did not, could not finish, had to pour them down the drain, were so bad before we came across this one.
Summer beers don't work typically, in my opinion, unlike something like fall beers, which you're using things like pumpkin as the main ingredient in your mash. With summer beers, it seems like they have their beer and then they add things to it regardless of what was in the mash already. So it acts like an additive instead of making the beer out of that thing. Instead, you just have a beer and then you throw berries in there. It's gross. It just ends up being really gross.
Yeah, well, it's a tricky business when you're dealing with a lot of fruits, which a lot of summer beers try to do, the berries, the watermelon, those sorts of things, because you're really on the line with cider territory.
Right.
One of the beers we tried actually, to me, tasted like somebody just mixed like a cheap light beer with fruit juice. And it just didn't blend well. And I think that's the problem, is if you have it blend too well, you really, is it a beer anymore or is it a cider? But I think that's kind of where Oberon gets it right, is that it doesn't add a whole lot of extra stuff. It's very minimal and simple.
Well, I think that's the trick. Don't go out of your way to make a summer beer. Do something to your beer that makes people associate it with summer. And you're right, this minimal ingredient stuff seems to be the key. If you remember back when we did Weihenstephaner Hefeweißbier, they had minimal ingredients in their wheat beer as well, and you got clove and banana simply just from the hops. It made it a really good spicy beer, good for winter, but it was also refreshing enough for summer, spring, whatever. Oberon kind of does the same thing here, except with hops that bring out citrus undertones, and so automatically you're getting that summer feel without having to go, hey, we're putting strawberries in this, or we're using watermelon for our mash. They're just bringing out the citrus with their hops and keeping everything minimal, and I think that's what makes it work so well.
And I think also one of the big things that makes a beer a summer beer is that it's not too heavy, that it's not too filling, it doesn't make you feel dragged down, because you're going to be drinking it in hot weather. And you don't have to add gimmicks to make it work for the summer. Just make it something that's good to drink in hot weather. And Oberon works for that, I think.
It does. So we know what it doesn't have. Let's talk about now what it has. First of all, I think it's really impressive that Bell's uses their own house yeast to make their beer. That just goes to show you how dedicated they are to their craft, at least from an outsider looking in. Not everyone uses their own yeast, so the fact that they take that extra step already makes me assume that they really, really care about their beer.
I think besides the yeast, there's not much to it. It's hops and barley and malt, and I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, throw some water in there, and there you go. The look of the beer, it's very hazy when you pour it. It's almost an orange color, which kind of gives you the impression of what you're about to taste, which is fine by me. It makes it look thicker than it actually is. And when you tilt the glass to drink it, you get hit with some malt, but mostly it's just citrus.
And the texture and the taste is almost exactly what you'd expect from what it smells like. It smells very light, very malty, very citrusy, and that's pretty much the taste. It tastes light. It's not too, I always describe beers as being like prickly if there's like really heavy carbonation or really like spiciness to it. And it doesn't have that. It's almost smooth, but it's not like smooth like a porter where it would be heavy and off-putting. But it has a good malt flavor with a citrus aftertaste, which I find really nice. It's like just a light tad of bitterness, but not too much.
Because it's a wheat beer, you almost don't get a lot of flavor within the beer itself, but the aftertaste and the aroma that sticks around in your mouth after you take a sip of that orange and citrus flavor, that's really where the beer stands out the most. I want to go back to what you said about it being very light. I think it being made of wheat helps it stay light, and then those citrus undertones really steal the show, And that's what makes it a great summer beer. Like you were saying, it's light, it's not too heavy, it's malty enough to remind you that you're drinking a beer, and then boom, there goes that citrus. And you're able to drink this without it feeling too heavy, and it makes you think you can go for another one. And that's really what a good summer beer is all about.
Yeah, and the alcohol content, it's not too high. So it's not like one of those dangerous things where you don't taste the alcohol and you think you can go for another one and then all of a sudden you're knocked over. This one, I think it's, 5.7%?
Yes, so it's not as light as a light beer, but it's not so heavy either. So I don't know if I would chug it, but yeah, you definitely, if you pace yourself, you'll be able to drink these throughout your whole cookout or whatever it is you're doing.
It's not too expensive for what it is, too. I was able to find, was it a 4-pack for about $10 a Total Wine?
Now, keep in mind, these 4-packs are pint-sized, so that's, how does that translate in the U.S.? 16 fluid ounces. So it's a pretty big can. It's not quite a tall can, but you get to fill up a nice, hefty pint glass, and then you get to say you're drinking a pint, which is always fun.
And I'd say, I mean, just for it being a craft beer, that seems really reasonable to me. I mean, it's kind of comparable with a lot of what you'd see, but it's reasonable enough that you're not going to be like, okay, I'm going to drink one and then save the rest of them because this is my whole paycheck or savings that I had to put into getting this or whatever.
Yeah, some craft beers are very, very expensive in that way. I'm really glad we found this one. I cannot recommend it enough personally if you're looking for a summer beer that doesn't taste too heavy like fruit, because the thing with the fruit mash is, again, is there's already a lot of sugar in fruit. So when you use it for your mash and then you boil it and you add the hops, that yeast is going to interact with all the sugar in the fruit, but the yeast is already interacting with all the sugar that was in your original mash anyway. So it's almost like double the sugar, sometimes triple the sugar. And I might be talking out of my ass here a bit. I've only made beer once, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But it seems the more sugar you have for the yeast to eat, the more weird tasting the beer is going to get. And they avoided that here, and I think that's good.
As always, it's a matter of personal preference. If you like weird fruit watermelon beers, that's great for you. For our preference, this is definitely where it's at for the summertime.
So there you have it. I think we've said all there is to say. If you're looking for a beer that's going to give you great summer vibes without getting too weird in the flavor department, check out Oberon by Bell's Brewing. I don't think you're going to be disappointed.
That's right. It is full-bodied enough to have just a wonderful flavor, but it's light enough that you're not going to feel weighed down, especially in those hot summer months. So definitely check it out.
Hey, it's Bryce here from Behind the Bar, brew, food, and mixology tips for a better drinking experience. If Bell's Oberon has piqued your interest, then I got something really special for you today. 2 incredible summertime recipes that will not only bring out the sweet citrusy flavors of your Oberon beer, but will also take it to the next level in ways that will absolutely wow your guests at your next summertime get-together. Today, we're taking a look at some mini crab cakes with avocado dip that we will be pairing with a beer cocktail called the Oberon Orange Sangria. These are definitely going to ensure that your summer is a memorable one, and we're going to learn how to make them right now from Behind the Bar. Let's start with the crab cakes, specifically the avocado dip. Have pit and peeled 1 large ripe avocado and stick it in a blender. Then add some cilantro, non-fat plain Greek yogurt, minced garlic, some lemon or lime juice, and salt and pepper to taste. Blend until completely smooth before sticking it in the fridge for a few hours to firm up. To make your crab cakes, crack 2 large egg whites into a bowl and give them a very quick and mild whip. Don't overdo it. Just slightly beaten is what you're going for. Toss in a pound of crab meat and then smash it all together with some fresh breadcrumbs, Dijon mustard, salt, cayenne pepper, and a little Old Bay seasoning to taste. If the mixture seems too loose at this point, just add more breadcrumbs. From there, shape your mixture into about 30 tiny cakes, around 1.5 inches in diameter. Take a large pan, heat some oil over medium heat, and cook your crab cakes for about 2.5 minutes on each side before setting them on a paper towel to cool and drain. Top with your avocado dip and enjoy. Now, Oberon is a perfectly good beer on its own and will complement these crab cakes completely. However, if you want to be more adventurous or you have people at your pool party who just don't like beer by itself, serve them up this orange sangria. Now, I'm about to tell you how to make a large batch of this stuff. If you're interested in making just a single serving size cocktail, well, that's more math than I care to do, but if you want to, knock yourself out. To make a batch of Oberon Orange Sangria, you'll need something that can hold more than half a gallon of liquids. A pitcher, large bowl, glass jug, any of those will do. Pour into your container 2 cups of cold orange juice, a half cup of orange liqueur, a 1/4 cup of silver tequila, 2 thinly sliced oranges, and a few sprigs of rosemary and thyme. Top this off with 3 bottles or 36 ounces of Oberon before stirring very gently until mixed well. Then stick it in the fridge for about an hour. After that, take another 3 bottles of beer and again, gently stir them into your brew. Serve up immediately into any glassware or cups you're using that day, but, and I cannot stress this enough, do not use ice. The oranges and the liqueur will bring out Oberon's citrusy tartness to the front of the brew, while the herbs will give its malty body a lot of warm, snappy fragrances that will balance out the sweet. If that combo doesn't say summer, then I don't know what does. Oh, and of course, don't forget about that tequila, which will give your orange sangria a very unique but subtle bite that isn't all that strong, but it is strong enough to give you that classic cocktail reaction of, oh, that's really good. Like I said, this crab cake and cocktail combo is going to help make your summer even. Don't be surprised if it actually becomes a summertime staple that you make for your cookouts every year going forward. Food and drinks play a huge role in our fondness of any particular season, and while nothing may entirely beat out burgers, dogs, and ribs with an ice-cold beer in the summer, these crab cakes and orange sangria can definitely complement them. And with that, I raise my glass, toast to your health, and hope to see you next time from behind the bar. Cheers.
That's all we have for today. Thanks for coming along on our big old summer bang. Board game bang? Summer board game bang. Anyway.
I really hope that doesn't catch on. That's what we'll be known for.
No.
The Board Game Bang podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Welcome
God.
in. This is the Board Game Bang podcast.
Okay.
Anyway.
You've had too much Oberon.
We hope that this episode inspired you to bust out some of your own favorite summer games, and we'd love to hear about those.
Yeah, definitely. If there was a game we didn't talk about, if there's a summertime game that you love, let us know in the comment section from wherever you're listening.
Coming up next week, we are going to be unboxing a brew topic, actually. We're going to be talking about tipping culture and where it's gotten today and where we think it's going in the future.
Yeah, it should be an interesting one, seeing as tip jars are popping up everywhere. I look forward to that conversation. If you like the show, if you find it of value, if you are entertained, please leave us a 5-star review from wherever you're listening. As always, 5 stars is the only acceptable number of stars. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. See, I don't know the internets. I don't know how it works. But most importantly, sharing it with your friends means the most to us. It helps the show grow, yeah, but it gets us out there and it gets us a part of you and your friends' board game conversations, and that's really what it's all about. So that'll do it. Let's get this summer going. Until next time, I'm Bryce. That is Jess. We are the Game and Drink Connoisseurs, and we will catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Fucking board game bang.